Hello, Drunkduckers. This is Ozone Ocean. With me are Baines and Tanserine, and we are here today to talk about changing depictions of sexuality in media, basically. In the media. For Quackcast number 786. Hello, Baines and Ozone Ocean. Oh, God. Hello, Baines and Ozone Ocean. Hello, Ozone. How are you going? God. Hello, Baines and Tants. How are you going?
Going well.
Excellent.
Doing well.
Doing well. That's lovely to hear. All right, theme song. And that was our little theme song, and now we're going to talk about the featured comic. Oh dear, so we have a featured comic this week. I did a featured comic. I featured it, and it was Kuro Shuri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So I'm going to tell you about Kuro Shuri now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Kuro Shuri. In the mood for a classic high school manga? Well, then try Kuroshuri. The princess of a faraway kingdom faces imminent death at the hands of a brutal enemy, but at the crucial moment she vanishes. Cut to a typical high school with kids gossiping. We get to know the various personalities of a small group of students before we focus on Hisaki and Yasha, strangers and outcasts who become fast friends. Hisaki carries a sword with him for some reason. He's quiet but smart and cheeky, and a very good fighter. Yasha is initially a loner, but as soon as she finds a friend, she latches on tight. She's loud, brave, and defends her friends and herself no matter what. The art is mostly manga, line art with some expertly applied halftone and grayscale, though there is some colour in the beginning. The story is a shonen high school manga with drama, comedy, and action. This is a great comic by Kikirni, rated T for teen, so read it. That was Kuroshuri. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce a best of by Gun Wallace. He's had many, many lovely themes, and this week I've chosen X Up. Is this a theme for a comic? No, it could be a theme for X Up. It does have some wah-wah guitar, the sexiest guitar, after all, but it isn't. This is a theme for the number 6. That number that a certain user, Plamia, gives to comics when he feels they deserve it. A 6 out of 5. This is a theme for a concept of a supportive Didier to Plamia, and to every 6 he has ever handed out. Okay, so it's also a theme for X Up, but don't tell anyone. Okay, take it away, Gun Wallace, with your theme to X Up, originally from Quackcast 256 on the 1st of February 2016. Hope you liked that little theme song by Gun Wallace that I decided to choose. I did, that's why I chose it. Right. Okay, so now the changing face of sexuality, the depictions of sexuality in media. And this is all the kinds of forms. So we just did our little Patreon video about this, and we probably discussed it better there. I don't know, but the where this idea came about is because we're sort of talking about it in a thread by Fairwork Studio, and the topic came around to like depictions of sexuality in media in various ways, and different people have different opinions on it. So I think it's a really interesting topic, especially because we tend to think about this stuff in a linear fashion. You know, like you go back 10 years, 20, 30 years, and even back then people thought of it in a linear fashion. Like some people think, oh my God, everything's so permissive now. We used to be all kind of like all delicate and family friendly, and now look at the depictions in media. You have these very sexy eroticism in media, and it's oh my God. Or you have people saying, oh no, there's everything used to be rather safe and standard, and now you have depictions of gay people and poly people and whatever in the media, and they treat it like some sort of linear path. And it goes the opposite way too. People think, oh my God, they've taken out all the depictions of sexuality in media and everything's too cleaned up now. So there's those two opinions. But reality isn't linear. Time is linear, but social trends and all this kind of thing and depictions in media are not linear in any way, shape or form. Things change all the time. They go backwards and forwards, with changing politics and changing world, things like this fashion stuff just is never goes along one path of progression. So like we were talking about in the Quackcast, like when film first started, there were like very open depictions of sexuality back in the early films. Even before film existed, they had like peep shows and things where people would like see a very short little video, and it was not film where you'd put a coin in a booth and they'd watch a short little film, and they're usually at things like tourist resorts, beachside things, especially in places like in Britain where you have piers where there's all this kind of stuff on a big jetty that projects into the ocean, and you have like people going to there to enjoy the sunshine and the beach and all this kind of stuff. And they had these booths where people would go and put money in, and they'd see some short little sex film, and that was in the 1910s. That's
I remember.
That's
yeah. I'd put a nickel in, and you'd see Ankles Plus. It was an Ankles Plus theater I used to go to.
What the Butler Saw, I think that was a popular title. Scandalous, yes.
Yes, What the Butler Saw. Yes.
Very popular. We should do a webcomic called that, What the Butler Saw.
That's really funny.
Someone else should do it, because we got too much stuff. Okay, someone take that up. We need a What the Butler Saw comic. But yeah, depictions in porn went all the way back, and in mainstream media, they had depictions of, sexuality, people in very skimpy stuff, bare breasts, probably bare crotches and stuff like that in the early films and things. That existed because censorship didn't exist. There weren't any rules against it. And if there's no rules against it, well, why can't you have it in the media? So it was in the media. Wasn't till a thing called, now I could be wrong on this, the Hayes Decree, something like this.
Hayes Code or something like that.
Yeah, I should look it up, but we don't do that in this podcast. We're all about the Dunning-Kruger effect. We're experts on everything that we know a little thing about. That's just how we are. We openly admit it. But yeah, so this thing came about, and suddenly all depictions in American media had to be censored, and that kind of disappeared. And there was a kind of knock on to international media as well. Obviously, America was a massive producer of film, but other countries like Germany had this massive, productions of film, and certain other countries as well. But yeah, that happening in America had a knock-on effect on other countries, and there was a lot of change. And then, say, into the 1930s, then film was a lot less sexy and a lot more violent, because you have to do something in order to get your people in to watch the stuff. So violence was a good alternative. And yeah, you don't tend to have a lot of censorship rules against that. And we talked about like the Comics Code Authority, Baines. You brought that up, Seduction of the Innocent.
Right.
In, did we say the 1960s?
I believe it's late 50s, early 60s. I remember Chance wrote a news post about it a couple of years ago, and it reminded me of it. Yeah, it was like kids in the 50s, I think, that had all these horror comics and all these kind of unrestrained comics, and then there was a clampdown on that material.
So that was
I want to say late 50s, early 60s or something. Yeah, something like that.
So that was clamped down quite heavily. So in order to not have political interference in comics, this is in the States, in America, the comics companies got together and had this thing called the Comics Code Authority, which was a voluntary system that they got together and they policed themselves, which meant that the government wouldn't be tempted to go and put regulations against them. So that was something they did, which closed down a lot of good comics like EC Comics, and
it killed the flourishing horror comics industry, I guess. Yeah.
It was, and it wasn't just about sexuality either, or horror. It was about any depictions of like demons, any depictions of like someone with magical powers doing certain things. So it was all that kind of ridiculous stuff they had rules against. So, and because it wasn't a government thing, that meant that you had all kinds of weirdness of this voluntary code group that you might not have had otherwise. So it was stricter than a government-controlled thing would be. So, but then again, that sort of fizzled out into the 70s, so it didn't even really last that long. It changed comics really, really drastically, so no longer did you have people being killed in comics so much. You had, things were a lot safer and sillier, and they call that like the... So I think the Golden Age was the first kind of comics where they were kind of more brutal, and where they started with the horror comics. Then you had Silver Age comics, and Silver Age I think is the Comics Code Authority age. So everything's a lot more wacky and silly. So in order to attract people, they had to sort of increase the silliness in comics in order to attract kids, basically. So you had very silly plots and things like that. And then into the late 70s, the Comics Code Authority really didn't have any more power in the end, and you went back to darker comics into the late 70s, I think, but definitely into the 80s. Like you had famously with Batman, you've got Frank Miller's stuff about.
Yeah, The Dark Knight Returns. Was that 89 or something? I want to say something like that.
That late, oh my god! But you did have stuff earlier than that, though.
Yeah, I think I don't know in enough detail, but I think you probably had your mainstream kind of comics, and then the more alternative, and then stuff in between.
Yeah. Well, there was a rise in alternative comics just because of the Comics Code Authority. So you had things like what's his name, Crumb, I think, maybe, doing various things, and also kinds of other like really sexual kind of comics. They just blossomed out of the fact that they're alternative, so they don't have to follow the rules of this Comics Code Authority because it's not a government thing and they're not part of that anyway, so they're just doing their own thing. And then there were these European comics that were coming in, the famously Metal Hurlant comics, heavy metal to us, really showcased a lot of these comic artists, because heavy metal wasn't like something that made the comics. It was just like an anthology sort of thing. It was a series that would pay for various comics in order to be displayed in there, but these people were established comic artists doing their own comics, and they appeared in Metal Hurlant, and they were very, very sexy comics. You know, you look at heavy metal comics from the 60s, well, not 60, I don't know. No idea about the 60s, even if they had them, but I know the 70s and the 80s, they were, oh my God, very, very sexy and very violent and amazing stuff that, wasn't so popular in mainstream comics. So, yeah, like we're saying, there's no such thing as a linear progression in this. It goes backwards and forwards and up and down and all over the place because of all these complicated competing factors. Like sexuality in movies, like there was sexuality in movies, like, okay, so there was this Hays Code or whatever that happened, so that kind of like made things a bit less sexy. But then, say, after the 40s into the 50s, things started to get a bit more sexy. Into the 1960s with the Cultural Revolution, full-on sexiness. I mean, oh my God, there are some very kind of sexy films that were fully mainstream. Even porn, like full-on porn, was going mainstream. And porn would have like massive plots, you know, $1 million budgets, and some of it would even be shown in mainstream theaters. There's, of course, the famous Caligula film, which, you know, starred mainstream actors that actually showed porn in it because it was produced by the guy behind Penthouse, I think.
Oh.
So yeah, that's a kind of famous crossover between those things. It stars Anthony the guy from Clockwork Orange and all that kind of stuff is in it.
Yeah, Malcolm McDowell.
There you go. Not Anthony McDowell, but Malcolm McDowell. There we are. Which is, yeah, that's a disgusting film for various reasons. And
so I've heard. Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's revolting for many reasons. Not just the sexuality. It's just bad. But he is a good actor, of course. I think Helen Mirren was in it too.
Oh, really? Wow.
I'm not sure. There are a few noted actors. Yes. So anyway, into the 1960s, then with the Cultural Revolution, you have a lot more sexuality. But of course, you always have comedic sexuality in a lot of things anyway. You know, there's more serious. There's often there's the gay character in a lot of films. You know, a male homosexual character who is a comic relief character a lot of the time. Kenneth Williams, famously in the Carry On films, was a gay man. He's part of that ensemble of comedians in the Carry On team, and he often played a very comedic kind of gay character. But the style of that in British comedy was there was like a dog whistle to gayness, so the character wouldn't really be depicted as being openly gay, but everyone kind of knew he was gay, basically. And that was the standard way of having a gay character. And Frankie Howard would be that kind of character in a lot of films as well, like Up Pompeii and various things. So, yeah, that was just a popular way of doing it back then. And now we think that we're so much more enlightened that we don't do that. But we've had, you know, naive depictions of gay people forever in films, because after that, then we had the silly positive stereotype of gay characters, where these creative, amazing, successful women would have the gay best friend character, who would be the magical homosexual. So he would be their best friend, and he would be going, oh dear, and he'd be helping them dress properly, and he'd be super fit and super handsome and just gorgeous and right about everything, and he had the best taste in the world, and he would like be so funny and intelligent and help them out. And it was just, that's another thing, like it's like benign racism. You're putting someone on a pedestal and you're thinking, yeah, that's a positive like a depiction, but it's not really, because you're artificially making it seem as if all gay people are like this, and they're not real people. They're not allowed to be real people. They have to be this magical, perfect person. So they're not portrayed as real human beings. They're portrayed as this stereotype character just the same as the famous magical Negro character who just exists to help out all the white people, and is very wise, but is not allowed to actually be depicted as a real person with real failings and successes and all that kind of stuff. They're just there to be, oh yes, oh yeah, young sir, yes, oh, that kind of thing. So that's not a good stereotype, but that has been a very popular stereotype for a long time. So much so that a lot of women friends I've had have sought out that gay best friend character to be as if they were a real person, to help them manage their fashion sense and all this kind of stuff and laugh at their jokes and stuff like that. Like, no, it's not a real person. Gay people are real, actual human beings. They're not there to be your little best friend character there. Have you ever seen that particular stereotype in media?
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
The thing is, even if supposedly you have in a constellation of characters, if you have the gay person that for whatever reason subverts the stereotype, and they are not the fashion conscious person or whatever, they are almost never the main character or one of the main characters. They are less central to the story, at least in a lot of 20th century, let's say, media.
Traditionally,
yeah.
That's changed now. I mean, there are niche films that are just for different groups, so there will be totally.
Yeah, I do think there is a shift now. I don't know how mainstream it is because I have not I used to be very much a person that watched all the new movies in West, like Hollywood movies and stuff. Now I can't really watch Hollywood movies unless they are of a very specific level of quality. And I don't want to sound like a post, like, oh, I am an art critic. It's just that the style of acting that Hollywood produces usually doesn't appeal to me anymore. I have been spoiled by Asian acting jobs. So yeah, there are a few that are extremely well done, like Conclave or Sinners and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. But I don't feel that I have watched enough Hollywood to know how much of the shift that I see, for example, in books and in indie comics or web comics is happening. How much it has spilled over in movies. So yeah, but it's definitely happening, and it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I think a classic. Someone who depicts that character often was Stanley Tucci for some reason. I sort of this idea of him often portraying that kind of character, or portraying it enough that it struck a chord in my head. And I think he did that kind of character in The Devil Wears Prada. He was the kind
I don't
of
remember
best
him
friend.
in that one, but maybe.
Which, yeah, it's so the other problem with it is you had often straight characters portraying these characters, which was rather weird. Like, say, The Birdcage, famously Robin Williams and various people, Hank Azaria, another. They weren't all straight, but mainly they were, and famously portraying these gay characters in this American version of a French movie, I think, originally. And yeah, although it's quite positive, it's a positive depiction of sexuality. So, but it's more directed to straight people and their preconceptions and stuff like that in order to make in order to make it socially acceptable to them, basically, to us, because we're all straight.
Also, like listening to the discussion, it occurs to me that we should at least talk about sexuality. Like sexuality is not a monolithic concept that is illustrated. Like there are so many different types and levels of sexuality that I think should be addressed a little bit. Like for example, I'm thinking um, the sexuality of Jessica Rabbit is not the same as the sexuality in Sinners. So you have different styles and different iterations, I guess, of sexuality. And I think that that should be a differentiation, like how much and what type of sexuality is the one that is being like pushed away, if it is, from mainstream media, what is the one being invited in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, good point. I mean, Jessica Rabbit is in ostensibly a children's film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, being the wife of this ridiculous, stupid character, Roger. But she's based on a stereotype of a vamp, basically. She's a very, very sexual, erotic sort of female character with, the body shape with a very slim waist and the wide hips and the big boobs and all this kind of stuff and, big lips and a breathy, panty voice, Lauren Bacall hair, extremely
very tiny waist.
Yeah, very swaying hips because of that, and very, very obviously super sexual. And that's a I mean that is based on a caricature. It's based on a stereotype, and it's deliberately there because it's. I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a parody of 1930s noir, basically. And they always had a vamp, and she's like a red herring. You think, oh, she's the one who's guilty, and she's the baddie, and all that kind of stuff, because that's the 1930s style. So that's why she's there. she's not just there because they wanted to stick a sexy character in a kid's cartoon. It's because she
although
is that.
Yeah, although she does tell us that she's not the villain. Like I'm not evil. I'm just drawn that.
Yeah.
So.
And she only played patty cakes with that guy to help Roger's career.
Exactly. And speaking of that, like the vamp red herring, we have the same thing in The Mask with
Jim Carrey.
What's yeah. Cameron Diaz is the vamp, and then you have the good girl called the redhead. I don't remember who she was, like the actress, but she has like the red frizzy hair, and she's the one that looks like she's going to be like the good girl that gets with a guy after he gets after after the vamp loses her allure on him. Because that was the stereotype, and of course it's subverted. And the vamp is the one that is the good person, and the quote-unquote good girl is the one that is working with the bad guys. So,
yeah, that was cool. That's still quite rare.
Yeah.
Damn it! I've seen that film like 3 times, and I can't remember that at all.
Yeah, and she has a very Jessica Rabbit moment where she performs, and Stanley has the mask on, and he turns into this wolf and is catcalling her.
Right.
The bulging eyes and the tongue and all this stuff.
Yeah. And she's very sexy and gorgeous, a gorgeous woman, of course. And she was very young in that movie, so she has everything going for her. So super sex, as
Yeah, I
sexy as
think
it gets.
it probably works even better, or worked even better back then, because I don't think she was a known,
Mm.
like a name. Yeah, this is before There's Something About Mary. I think I might be wrong about that.
Mhm. Yeah, I
You're
think
right.
The Mask was her debut, or at least her mainstream debut.
Right. So I mean, yeah, you'd see her later, like once everyone knew who she was, and it would be more expected that she would be the lead romantic
Mm,
interest at the end, or the good person, or whatever at the end. So yeah, that was
exactly.
really neat.
But yeah, I mean, like we're saying, these depictions of sexuality and sexiness, they're not linear. So we had a lot of sexy stuff into the 80s, famously, like 9.5 Weeks was very sexy, which is a film I think Kim Basinger and Mickey Rourke.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
I've never seen it actually.
I haven't
Me
Uh,
seen it
neither.
either.
No.
How about Basic Instinct? Was it in the 80s or was it 90s?
Yeah, that's 80s.
late
I think.
80s.
80s. That was
Yeah.
with Michael Douglas and this famous actor that I can't recall. Michael Douglas famously and Michelle Pfeiffer, I think.
No,
No,
no, Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone, you're right, Baines. With the whole leg crossing moment where she's not wearing any
yeah.
underpants. That is only, like, people go, oh my god, that's such a scandalous thing, but it's only a sexy scene because of the reactions of the guys looking on. Where Wayne Knight is one of the people, Newman,
Yeah,
famously.
Newman's there watching and sweating.
But yeah, the only reason it's so sexy is because of those guys. Because you cannot see anything, and even if you could, it's not that sexy to see a shadowed version of someone's, vagina, like half shadowed or whatever, briefly flashing as she crosses the leg. That's not sexy. That's not anything on film. It's nothing. But because it can be barely seen, but because of the way that actors make it, the character, not actors, but the characters have making it into such a big deal, that becomes the sexy aspect of it.
Yeah.
But because of that, people have like had that as a massive reference, like, oh my god, a woman uncrossing her legs. Wow, that film had such a breakthrough sexual moment. Oh my god. Basic Instinct. Oh my god. Because of that famous scene, and people misunderstand it. They think it's all about the vagina, but it's about the reaction and the expectation of it, which is rather an interesting thing. People focus too much on
Funny,
sorry, go on.
it's funny. Like I remember seeing that movie, and it was quite memorable. Twists and turns, and it was silly, but it was kind of intense. And you're like, "What's going on?" And at the end of the movie, you're still kind of going, "What's going on? What?" So she is. But I think personally, I wouldn't have even thought about that leg crossing, uncrossing scene, or really noticed it, or considered it. Oh, that's so sexy, unless it had become a moment and everyone was talking about it after the fact. That didn't really stand out. I would think more of, Jessica Rabbit or Cameron Diaz in The Mask or something like that is way sexier. Just as a audience member or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Something more raunchy. That's like, I don't know what point I'm making, but
I agree. I
yeah,
think maybe it was because she was apparently not wearing any underpants. So
right.
people outside, decontextualized that whole thing and brought that clip out and thought, oh my god, this has to be a super sexy moment in film, whereas in reality, in the context of the film, it really wasn't. So,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
And the thing is, sometimes sexuality is all in the mind, and I think that's the point of Basic Instinct, in the sense that they were all like horny white old men, and they were very easily manipulated into an idea of what this crossing and uncrossing of her legs was implying. So it wasn't really the view that was turning them on, it was the insinuation behind it. A far better depiction of that, in my opinion, is that I'm trying to remember the title of the movie, but I can't. It is a very old one, I think in the 40s or 50s at most, starring Ava Gardner, where she performs a striptease, quote unquote. But the only thing that she removes is her glove. And the whole point, I think it's Gigi. I don't think it's Gigi. I don't know. It is a scene. It is a very famous scene. But I tried to Google it and I got very suspicious sites back. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, I don't know. And I don't want to know. But yeah, and she's just like slowly removing her glove, but the way that she's touching her hand and stuff, it's all insinuating, a sexual act. And that was lauded at the time as a super sexy, um, downright raunchy scene. Although there's nothing, and of course they could not be censored because there was nothing um, illegal, quote unquote, about this scene.
Right.
It's all in the mind, really.
Well, that's
Yeah,
one of the
it's-
things. I mean, I think it's because if you say something sexy to someone and you convince them enough, then they'll believe it. But that's the same as like if you're depicting a super intelligent character. You as writer can only depict them as intelligent as you are, which is usually, not super like doctor of physics levels. So the way you do that is by making the other characters think, oh my god, that person's so intelligent. Oh my god, they're such a genius. I can't believe it. So you convince the audience that they are this thing by having everyone else. And it's the same with sexuality in media. In the way you're talking about, you have characters reacting and behaving as if, oh my goodness me, oh my god, it's unbelievable. Which is, it's like with humor as well. So you could either have something that's obviously humorous to the audience, or if you want to have a character who is like super duper humorous to the people actually, diegetic in the particular world, then you have characters go, oh my god, this person's so funny. Oh my god, I can't believe it. They're so hilarious. So then you as a writer don't have to write that level of, intelligent jokes in order to make them that funny.
But I mean, ironically, or maybe this is what you're saying in part, that can be very annoying to the reader or to the audience.
It can be.
They're like, this is
humor.
not funny at all. Like, all your characters are laughing, but this is moronic. This is so unfunny.
Unless you're doing it like the whole thing, like in a film where everybody's like uproariously laughing, and because the scene starts on the end of a joke, and this person says, and then the bathtub fell on his head and the goat ran away, and everyone's like bursts out laughing, and you think, oh my god, that must have been a really hilarious joke, but I'll never hear it because that was the previous scene where we as the audience didn't get to witness it, So
Right.
there is that. But it relates to the whole thing about, depicting sexuality, and that you can do it without actually depicting sexuality. It's a clever trick. It's a trick that we as authors are privy to. We can convince you of anything if we're smart enough. That's why people still think Sherlock Holmes is a genius. He's not. But but say I was just wanting to touch on the fact that when I brought up the stuff with the 9.5 weeks and Basic Instinct and all that kind of stuff, is that was a particular heyday for sexuality and eroticism in mainstream film, but there's not a linear kind of pathway from that to more sexuality in films, is there? Like, and I don't think there's less. I just think things just muddle along the way they are. Sometimes things get very sexy and sometimes they don't, there's no particular trend or whatever that I can really think of myself. I know there was a trend like in temporarily in TV. So TV had a very kind of strict censorship for a long time in a lot of I don't know how it was in every country, but I know in Australia it was quite strict until the late 80s, and America as well. Like they couldn't say various things on the air, like they couldn't swear, and then suddenly they could say one or two swear words, and then they could say any swear word they wanted. It just came a thing. It was a big deal. Like I remember in Sex in the City, they were allowed to say the CUNT word, and it was like, oh my god, they actually said it. Oh my god. But there are also depictions of nudity. Like in Australia, we had this, like in mainstream TV, and we thought, oh my god, this is a new thing. Oh my god, the censorship, the standards are changing. There's like these depictions of sexual, like, nudity and stuff like that in mainstream TV. Like it was like after a certain time at night, like maybe 9 o'clock or something like that. But then there were these suddenly, like a bit later on, we were rebroadcasting these old shows from the 70s. There was this particular one called Number 96, right? So that was a popular soap opera in the 1970s that showed full-on nudity of both men and women. And so our whole idea of us thinking, oh, this is like a linear trend, like suddenly with the standards going down and whatever, they're allowed to show sexuality. No, it wasn't linear at all. They'd done this like 20 years ago. So that was fascinating to discover. And then these other like TV, not TV, but movies from the 1970s resurfaced, and they were called Alvin, like the Trials of Alvin Purple, where there was this quite famous actor, Tony Blundell or something, I don't know, but a famous Australian actor, and they were basically sex comedies that, in the they started in the 1960s actually, I think. But yeah, sex comedies that had full-on nudity. So here's us, modern-day Australians, thinking, oh, all this kind of stuff is new, and it's, things are changing, and we're having more sexuality in these films because we're more enlightened and all this kind of stuff, and there's less censorship. We'd already had it in the 60s and 70s. So, yeah, it was just... So that's the thing. There is no linear relationship. But we do, that said, we do have more a positive depiction of gay people, at least, in films these days. At the moment. But then again, like it perhaps it isn't linear, because given the particular social and cultural change that's happening, maybe it will go back again. Because, yeah, it's, as we know, this stuff can go up and down. It can change.
I've also generally seen, at least my impression, again, I have no research to support this, it's just my impression, that when there is a push for one thing, there is going to be like a counter push right afterwards for the opposite thing. So you might have had a lot of censorship and nothing being able to be said, what you described. And then they swing all the way to, cussing like sailors all the time. And then that becomes that gets pushed back against again, and the pendulum swings again. So I do think we have this like
parabolic
yeah.
kind of continuation.
Yeah, sorry. Exactly. And sorry about that. But you also have, like, I would like to see some kind of balance in all of that. and also to use things where they are quote unquote warranted, in the sense that there are some movies where you have to have a lot of sexuality for the story to work. Uh, for example, take vampires. The concept of a vampire itself is super sexual. You cannot have. I mean, you could have if you want a prudish vampire. That would be interesting. But what I'm saying is that there is a general, like the general aesthetic, especially if you go classic vampires and stuff, is
Yeah.
super sexual. And therefore, or for example, when you are um, having like a very political movie that focuses on things that are not as adjacent to sexuality, you may not need any sexuality at all, depending. So what I'm saying is the best, in my opinion, usage of patterns and artistic licenses would be do what the story demands.
I mean, there's that aspect, do what the story demands, but there's also the aspect of, okay, so we're writing a thing to appeal to a certain audience, and we have to include, if sex sells, we include this and this and this, then we're bound to get a certain amount of viewers. So there's that aspect as well, writing towards, or not even writing towards, but like crafting something and doing it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Again, it is again, if you're catering to a specific audience, but I'm also assuming that this specific audience will be looking for a specific style of story as well. So
True. Okay, well, so when you guys were growing up, did you watch a lot of like sex comedies and things like this?
A little bit, and I liked slasher movies, at least some of them. I didn't go deep into that world even, but there was a lot of that kind of stuff in mainstream horror movies. And I should mention would you say, dichotomy of kind of the clampdown and the stricter measures against either comics or movies or whatever. And then you have an underground kind of thing that's a little more, or a lot more raunchy. Then in the mainstream stuff, you would also have a certain brand of sort of eroticism or something like that, very strongly sometimes. And you see it in sitcoms in recent decades. It's like then like a show, like many mainstream shows like Friends are so like obsessed with sex and so like into that, like they're so provocative and so extreme in other ways. And the same applies to superhero comics that I read in the 80s, that were approved by the Comics Code or whatever, but super sexy, like erotic looking characters and these tight costumes and situations that were super like provocative and made a teenage boy want to buy sex comics.
More comics.
Yeah.
Well, there's Lady Death. I remember that character from the 90s. Very sexy. But always in comics you had Vampirella, I think, who was very, very sexy on the covers, not very sexy in the actual comic. But
exactly.
The covers.
And mainstream, I would put like those comics were more honest about what they were dishonest because the covers didn't match the interior of the book, but X-Men comics.
Rogue! Oh my god!
Sexy, the costumes and all that stuff. And even if it wasn't crass and in your face, it was not even almost, it was more provocative because it wasn't so blatant. You know?
Yeah. I was trying to think of some points, but I've forgotten it now. Damn it. But yeah, you're right, Baines. That's quite an interesting point about that.
I mean, same with movies. I would consider personally, but I might be have Arrested Development probably. But like something like Weekend at Bernie's with its bikini-clad extras and everything running around, way more sexy than 9.5 Weeks, which I've never seen. But
I would even say that there were, like, for example, remember Police Academy, where you have the female instructor, what's her name? I don't remember.
Callahan, I remember.
Yes, that's the one.
With the giant eyes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, she's an iconic, the stern character type as well. The strong
with the big shades.
Yeah.
Big pair of heavy, bouncy shades. Yes.
And the hair and the tight bun, and she was really like aggressive and like a taskmaster. You know,
she was out of a role play thing, and I'm not talking like kid role play. So there was a lot of sexuality in movies that that they were supposed to be for everybody, but they were often played for laughs, like Callahan, for example, or
Sigourney Weaver in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, for sure.
Or Rick Moranis.
Or that like a gag where I don't remember. I think it was still in Police Academy where one of the cops accidentally walks into a gay bar.
It's not accidental.
It wasn't accidental.
It's a prank against these two guys because they were like hard asses and
but the gag of the straight man into the gay bar where you have all these very burly big gay men dressed as and then dancing the tango with the straight guy that is scared out of his wits. It was played for laughs.
Which is it's partly the gay panic kind of a thing, but also it's gay panic. It's making fun of gay panic, really, in those characters. So yeah, it's not really very politically correct in these days, but it was a thing then. But the characters weren't really portrayed negatively, so. It's an interesting portrayal. I was thinking in terms of when you were like talking about the dichotomy between safe depictions and then as a reaction to that you have less safe depictions. So I was thinking about in the 90s, famously we had Star Trek, all the Star Trek television shows, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and those were massively popular. Then we had that other show which was very popular as well. We had Stargate, but we also had this other thing. What is it? Babylon 5. So these were massive in the sci-fi world. They were like tentpole kind of series. But then you had this weird television, and you had a few other smaller ones around the place. But you had this weird one from Canada and Germany and Britain. I think it's Canada and Germany were the main people behind it, called Lex. And the specific kind of creation of this TV show was driven by this guy's want to produce, I want like a TV series that's basically based on the B movie of sci-fi. Like we've had all these A movie versions of sci-fi in a TV series. I want one that's based on a B movie, with all the nastiness and the sex and the grittiness and the grottiness and all the humor and all that kind of stuff. I want a TV series about sci-fi that's got all the fun stuff in it. And that was a deliberate reaction against the beautiful cleanliness of Star Trek, which does have its sexuality in it, but it's very polished and clean. And Babylon 5, which really didn't have much at all. But Lex is just, compared to those, Lex is a disgusting public toilet in what they have. Oh my God. But it's fun because of that. It's ridiculous. So yeah, Lex is the alternate, grotty, sneaky, clever, weird, sexy reaction to those things. And I think it's definitely worth seeing because of that. So,
I mean, Lex is definitely one I would see on the Space Channel, we called it in Canada, like our sort of version of the Sci-Fi Channel. Sort of, flipping through channels at night, you'd see some Lex, or I would, and go, "Oh my gosh, like, what is this? This feels like naughty. I got to watch this."
Malcolm
so
McDowell is in an episode.
It is definitely different than the mainstream kind of sexiness of other shows. That stuff is there, but yeah, definitely Lex pushes farther.
Oh yeah, much farther. I mean, there were things like another great Canadian show that you might not know about, Baines. I know all the Canadian stuff. Star Hunter.
I've actually seen a bit of that. Yeah.
Oh my God, you have? No one's seen that. It's so good. I mean, in a lot of ways,
obscure. It's not. I happened to catch it on TV, like, because I always had a TV on. But I just happened to see one, and it caught my eye. Looked quite good, but it was pretty good. I'd like to see more of that, actually.
It's interesting. They tried to do a cleaned up version of it a few years ago, because the episodes are a bit wonky, and they were, the point of them really wasn't done too well because of, I don't know, production schedule and the writing. So they re-edited it, and I just really couldn't get into it. It was too weird. So I'm a fan of the original, which I have on DVD. So
nice.
watch the proper versions again and again.
I saw the DVD in a store one time recently. I should have got it.
Oh, it's so great. It's basically, this guy is it's like a bounty hunter, and he's there with his niece or something, and these various people, and this hard-ass black woman as well on the ship, and it's very cool. But he's like a longshoreman kind of thing in space. It's very weird. He doesn't look like a bounty hunter at all. Anyway, we're off topic now, but we're towards the end of the Quackcast, so yes, people watch Star Hunter if you can. It's not very sexy, but it's fun. Watch Lex if you want sexiness. Watch Star Trek if you want like a really polished kind of version of sexiness that is a bit awkward because of that. Like, sexiness in Star Trek was always a bit cringe, I found. Because you don't want the characters to be sexy. Like, I love Marina Sirtis' character. What's that? Counselor Troy. She's beautiful and everything, but I don't really want to see her being sexy. And I don't want to see Riker being sexy in that series. It just feels weird and off to see them being sexy. At least that was my opinion of it. I always found that very, my whole body would cringe. In Lex, it's fine because that's a sexy show anyway. So it's cool. But in Star Trek, no. I don't like it.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Like, a lot of it, especially you'd see this in early Star Trek, like early Next Gen or whatever. Maybe, I don't know what it is exactly, but it goes a bit too far, or it's something, Gene Roddenberry's sex-obsessed mind. Was never quite what I was looking for. I love sexy stuff, but I never found that to be very pleasing. It's like making me like a little bit queasy.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to see my sciencey characters being all sexy. Don't do that. Which is, that perhaps it's a failure on our part. We can't accept sciencey sort of people being sexy. They have to be sciencey in our minds.
That's not my issue with it. personally.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, you might.
That's fine. Yeah, I don't know why I don't like them being sexy.
Yeah, I tried watching the. I told you guys this once years ago, probably not on the episode, but I bought and tried watching the Batman porn.
Oh, really?
It's like a takeoff of the '60s, like the Adam West Batman.
Oh, okay. Oh my God, yeah, that would be hot.
It did not work. It was awesome. I watched they have a version on the disc with none of the sex scenes, and that was way better. I didn't want to see the actual time.
Oh my God, porn parody is another route we could go down, but yeah.
So maybe you're right, because Batman is a scientist, and I didn't want to see Batman.
Oh, well, thank you very much for being on Quackcast number 786, Banes and Tants.
Woo.
Bye-bye,
Thank
Tants.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.